On a distant human colony orbiting a red dwarf star, life moved at a steady pace. The settlement, known as New Haven, was built to survive the harsh conditions of space. It wasn't glamorous or exciting, but it was home to hundreds of people who worked hard every day to keep things running smoothly. Miners dug deep into the planet's rocky surface for valuable minerals, while scientists studied the strange environment around them. Everyone had their role, and everyone stayed busy. But one morning something unusual happened, something no one expected. It started when a young boy named Ethan spotted her. He was playing near the edge of the settlement, tossing rocks into a shallow ditch when he noticed movement out of the corner of his eye. At first he thought it was just another worker passing by, but then he turned and froze. Standing there about 20 feet away was a girl unlike anyone he'd ever seen before. Her skin shimmered like polished metal under the pale light of the distant sun. She was small, maybe 10 years old, with large, oval-shaped eyes that seemed too big for her face. Her clothes were simple but odd, made of materials no one recognized. She didn't speak or move much, just stood there watching him. Ethan blinked a few times, unsure if he was imagining things. Then he called out, "Hey, who are you?" His voice echoed in the quiet morning air, but she didn't respond. Instead, she tilted her head slightly, studying him as though trying to figure out what he was. Feeling uneasy, Ethan backed away slowly and ran back toward the main part of the settlement. By the time he reached the nearest building, his heart was pounding. He told the first adult he saw, a mechanic named Carl, about what he'd seen. Carl listened patiently but shrugged it off. "Probably some prank," he said. "Kids these days love costumes." But it wasn't a prank. Word spread quickly among the colonists about the mysterious girl. Some went to investigate, curious, to see if it was true. Sure enough, she was still there, standing silently near the edge of the settlement. People gathered around her, whispering among themselves. No one knew where she had come from or how she had arrived. There were no ships in sight, and the nearest trading vessel wouldn't arrive for weeks. She looked human enough in shape, but her glowing silver skin and oversized eyes made it clear she wasn't from Earth or anywhere else familiar. At first, people tried talking to her. They asked questions, gestured, even offered food. But she didn't respond. She simply held a small object in her hands, cradling it gently. It was round, about the size of an apple, and it glowed faintly with a soft blue light. When someone stepped closer to examine it, she pulled it closer to her chest protectively. That stopped most people from trying to touch it. After a while, the crowd began to disperse. Some shrugged and went back to work, deciding she wasn't important enough to worry about. Others whispered theories. Maybe she was a lost traveler, or perhaps she was part of some secret experiment gone wrong. A few laughed nervously, joking that she might be a robot sent to spy on them. Whatever the truth was, no one seemed willing to take responsibility for her. That evening, as the artificial lights of the settlement flickered on, the girl wandered aimlessly through the streets. She didn't seem frightened exactly, but there was a sadness in her expression that tugged at the hearts of those who noticed. Still, no one intervened. Life on New Haven was tough, and people had their own problems to deal with. The miners complained about long hours and low pay. The scientists argued over funding for their projects, and the families living in cramped quarters worried about whether they'd ever get to return to Earth. In such an environment, a strange girl wandering around wasn't high on anyone's list of priorities. The next day, Rachel Dawson spotted her while walking back to the medical bay after finishing her shift. Rachel was a medic, one of only 3 working in the entire colony. She was in her early 30s with short brown hair and a kind smile that put patients at ease. Unlike many others, Rachel had always been sensitive to the struggles of others. She couldn't walk past someone in pain without stopping to help, even if it meant going out of her way. So when she saw the alien girl sitting alone on a bench, clutching that glowing object tightly, something inside her stirred. Rachel hesitated for a moment, unsure what to do. She had heard the rumors about the girl and knew some people thought she might be dangerous. But looking at her now, Rachel couldn't see any threat. The girl looked fragile, almost delicate, as though she might break if touched. Taking a deep breath, Rachel approached cautiously. "Hello," she said softly, keeping her voice calm and gentle. The girl didn't respond, but she did look up, meeting Rachel's gaze with those enormous eyes. For a brief second, Rachel felt as though she could see straight into the girl's soul. There was fear there, yes, but also hope and trust. Encouraged, Rachel knelt down so she was closer to the girl's level. "Are you okay?" she asked, even though she doubted the girl would understand. To her surprise, the girl extended the glowing object toward her. Rachel hesitated again, unsure whether she should take it. But something about the girl's expression told her it was safe. Slowly, she reached out and accepted the object. It was warm to the touch, pulsing faintly in her hand. As soon as she held it, the girl relaxed visibly, letting out a small sigh. Rachel smiled reassuringly. "It's okay," she said, even though she knew the words meant nothing to the girl. "I'm here." She didn't know why she felt so drawn to this strange visitor, but she couldn't ignore the feeling that she needed to help. Little did Rachel know this moment would change everything, not just for her, but for the entire colony. Rachel knew she couldn't leave the girl alone on the bench. The thought of her wandering the settlement unprotected didn't sit right with her. Clutching the glowing object in one hand, Rachel gently gestured for the girl to follow her. First, the girl hesitated, glancing around as if unsure whether to trust this stranger. But after a moment, she stood up and walked beside Rachel, staying close as though afraid to lose sight of her. The medical bay wasn't far, but the journey felt longer than usual. People stared as they passed, some whispering behind their hands. Rachel ignored them, focusing instead on keeping the girl calm. When they arrived, Rachel led her inside and closed the door firmly behind them. The room was small but tidy, filled with equipment and supplies necessary for treating injuries or illnesses. It smelled faintly of antiseptic, a scent that would be unfamiliar to the girl. Rachel placed the glowing object carefully on a nearby table and turned to face her. "Let's start with something simple," Rachel said quietly, more to herself than to the girl. She grabbed a chair and sat down, motioning for the girl to do the same. To her relief, the girl complied, sitting cross-legged on the floor since the chairs were too tall for her. Rachel studied her closely, trying to assess her condition. Her silver skin didn't appear injured, and her movements suggested she wasn't in pain. Still, there was an air of exhaustion about her, as if she hadn't slept in days or maybe longer. Dr. Alan Hayes, the head physician, entered the room shortly after. He was a middle-aged man with graying hair and a no-nonsense attitude. When he saw the girl, his eyebrows shot up in surprise. "What's this?" he asked, his tone sharp. Rachel explained quickly, telling him how she'd found the girl and brought her here. Alan listened without interrupting, though his expression grew increasingly skeptical. "You don't know anything about her," he said finally. "She could be dangerous. We should contact Governor Bennett immediately." Rachel shook her head. "She's not dangerous. Look at her. She's scared, maybe even lost. Can't we at least try to figure out who she is before we involve anyone else?" Alan sighed, rubbing the bridge of his nose. "Fine, but don't expect me to babysit." With that, he left the room, muttering under his breath. Rachel watched him go, feeling a mix of frustration and determination. She turned back to the girl, who was watching her silently. The glowing object still rested on the table, its light pulsing steadily. Over the next few hours, Rachel focused on building a connection. She offered the girl water and food, though it took some coaxing before she accepted. When Rachel handed her a piece of fruit, the girl sniffed it cautiously before taking a tiny bite. Her reaction was immediate. Her eyes widened and she smiled faintly, as if tasting something wonderful for the first time. Encouraged, Rachel gave her more, making sure she ate enough to regain her strength. As the day wore on, Rachel noticed something peculiar about the glowing object. Its light seemed to change depending on the girl's mood. When she appeared calm or happy, the glow brightened. But when something startled her, a loud noise outside, for example, the light dimmed noticeably. Intrigued, Rachel began experimenting. She spoke softly, using gentle tones, and observed how the light responded. It was clear the object was somehow connected to the girl's emotions. Rachel decided to name her Lyra, a placeholder until they could learn her real name, if she even had one. Lyra, Rachel said slowly, pointing to herself. I'm Rachel. The girl tilted her head, studying her. Then, hesitantly, she repeated the word Rachel in a soft, melodic voice. Rachel grinned, delighted by the breakthrough. That's right, she said. And you're Lyra. Word of Lyra's presence in the medical bay spread quickly through the colony. Some people came to see her out of curiosity, while others stayed away, fearful of what they didn't understand. Among those who visited was Emily Carter, a young astrophysicist with a fascination for anything extraterrestrial. Emily had been working on analyzing unusual energy readings near the settlement and was eager to examine the glowing object. When Emily arrived, Rachel introduced her to Lyra and explained what she'd observed about the object. Emily's eyes lit up with excitement. This is incredible, she said, pulling out a handheld scanner. May I? She gestured toward the object, waiting for permission. Rachel nodded and Emily carefully picked it up, running tests while Lyra watched intently. The results were astonishing. The object emitted low-frequency pulses that matched patterns similar to communication signals used by advanced civilizations. However, the technology was far beyond anything humans had developed. Emily theorized that the object might serve as both a tool and a form of communication. It's possible she's using it to express herself, Emily said, showing Rachel the data on her scanner. We just need to figure out how to interpret it. While Rachel and Emily worked together, tensions within the colony began to rise. Not everyone shared their enthusiasm for helping Lyra. Jack Miller, a burly engineer with a short temper, voiced his concerns loudly during a meeting at the community center. Why are we wasting resources on this thing? He demanded, glaring at Rachel. We don't even know what she is or where she came from. For all we know, she could be carrying some kind of disease. His words sparked murmurs of agreement among some of the settlers. Others remained silent, unwilling to take sides. Governor Laura Bennett, a pragmatic woman in her 50s, listened carefully before responding. We can't make assumptions based on fear, she said firmly, but we also can't ignore the potential risks. Until we know more, I'm ordering her confined to the medical bay under observation. Rachel felt a surge of anger but kept her composure. Lyra isn't a threat, she insisted. She's a child who needs our help. Governor Bennett held up a hand to silence her. I understand your concerns, Rachel, but my priority is the safety of this colony. If you want to continue caring for her, you'll have to do so under these conditions. With no other choice, Rachel agreed. Back at the medical bay, she broke the news to Lyra as gently as possible. Though Lyra didn't fully understand, she seemed to sense the change. Her posture became more withdrawn, and the glow of the object dimmed significantly. Rachel spent the rest of the evening comforting her, determined to show that she wasn't alone. Despite the restrictions, Rachel refused to give up. Each day, she and Emily worked tirelessly to decode the signals emitted by the object. They recorded patterns, compared them to known languages, and tested theories. Slowly, they began piecing together fragments of information. Images flickered across their screens, scenes of a devastated planet, dark skies choked with ash, and structures crumbling into ruin. There were glimpses of beings resembling Lyra, their expressions filled with despair. One night, as Rachel reviewed the footage, she realized the truth. Lyra wasn't just lost. She was fleeing something catastrophic. Her species had sent her away, hoping she could carry their knowledge to safety. But her journey had gone wrong, leaving her stranded on New Haven. The realization hit Rachel like a punch to the gut. Lyra wasn't merely a visitor, she was a survivor, and possibly humanity's first contact with an alien civilization. Though the road ahead would be difficult, Rachel vowed to protect Lyra. She knew convincing the colony to help wouldn't be easy, but she also knew she couldn't abandon her. As she looked at Lyra sleeping peacefully on a makeshift bed, clutching the glowing object to her chest, Rachel felt a deep sense of purpose. Whatever happened next, she would stand by Lyra's side. Rachel spent the next several days consumed by her mission to uncover more about Lyra. With Emily's help, they worked long hours in the medical bay, analyzing the glowing object and piecing together its secrets. The images they had seen, of a dying planet and desperate beings, were haunting, but they also revealed clues about Lyra's origins. Slowly, Rachel began to understand that Lyra wasn't just an abandoned child. She was a messenger, carrying vital knowledge meant to save her people. But convincing others of this truth was proving difficult. News of the glowing object's advanced technology spread through the colony, sparking both curiosity and fear. Some settlers were intrigued by the possibility of communicating with an alien civilization, while others saw only danger. Jack Miller remained one of the loudest critics, insisting that helping Lyra put the entire colony at risk. "What if she's part of some invasion?" he argued during a heated discussion at the community center. "We don't know what she's capable of." Governor Bennett listened carefully to both sides but remained cautious. She called Rachel and Emily to her office for a private meeting. The room was small and sparsely decorated, with a desk cluttered with papers and reports. Governor Bennett leaned forward, her expression serious. "Tell me everything you've learned," she said, "and don't leave anything out." Rachel took a deep breath and explained their findings: the images from the glowing object, the signs of environmental collapse on Lyra's home planet, and the evidence that Lyra had been sent away as a last hope for her species. Emily chimed in, showing the governor detailed scans of the object's energy patterns. "This isn't just a tool," Emily said. "It's a key to understanding an entire civilization. If we can decode it fully, we might be able to communicate directly with them." Governor Bennett rubbed her temples, clearly conflicted. "You're asking me to trust that this girl isn't a threat. That's a big leap of faith." "It's not just about trust," Rachel replied earnestly. "It's about doing the right thing. Lyra is alone, scared, and carrying something far bigger than any of us. If we turn our backs on her, we're no better than the people who abandoned her planet." The governor didn't respond immediately. She stared at the scans and images laid out before her, weighing the risks and rewards. Finally, she nodded. "All right," she said. "I'll give you 2 more days to gather concrete evidence, but if you can't prove she's safe, and that helping her benefits us, then I'll have no choice but to send her away." Relieved but aware of the pressure, Rachel and Emily returned to the medical bay with renewed determination. They poured all their energy into decoding the glowing object, working late into the night. Lyra stayed close, watching them with wide eyes. She seemed to understand that something important was happening, though she couldn't grasp the details. Whenever Rachel grew frustrated or overwhelmed, Lyra would reach out and touch her arm gently as if offering silent support. Their breakthrough came unexpectedly. One evening, while reviewing a series of pulsing signals from the object, Emily noticed a pattern that matched Earth's binary code, a universal language used in early computer systems. "Wait," she said, excitement bubbling in her voice. "This could be it. This might be how we communicate." Together, Rachel and Emily translated the signals, revealing fragments of a message. It was incomplete and disjointed, but the meaning was clear. Lyra's species had faced extinction due to their own mistakes: pollution, overconsumption, and warfare. In a final act of hope, they had sent Lyra to find help, carrying knowledge that could prevent other civilizations from making the same errors. The message ended with a plea: "Save us." Rachel felt tears welling up in her eyes as she read the words aloud. "They trusted her to carry their legacy," she whispered, "to warn others. And now she's here, with us." Armed with this new information, Rachel requested another meeting with Governor Bennett. This time she brought Dr. Alan Hayes along for support. Though initially skeptical, Alan had grown curious about Lyra after witnessing Rachel and Emily's progress. He agreed to vouch for their findings, lending credibility to their argument. The meeting took place in the main hall, where nearly everyone in the colony had gathered. Tensions ran high, with murmurs of disagreement rippling through the crowd. Jack Miller stood near the front, arms crossed and scowling. When Rachel stepped up to speak, the room fell silent, all eyes on her. She began by sharing the story of Lyra's people, their struggles, their failures, and their desperate attempt to survive. She showed the translated message, explaining its significance not just for Lyra's species but for humanity as well. "This is a warning," Rachel said, her voice steady despite the weight of the moment. "A chance to learn from their mistakes before it's too late. If we ignore her, we're turning our backs on an opportunity to change the future. For everyone." Her words resonated with some, but others remained unconvinced. Jack spoke up again, his tone harsh. "Even if what you're saying is true, why should we risk our lives for aliens? We barely have enough resources to survive ourselves." Before Rachel could respond, Emily stepped forward. "Because it's the right thing to do," she said firmly. "And because their technology could benefit us. Imagine what we could learn from studying the glowing object. It's worth the effort." The debate went on for hours, with arguments flying back and forth. Eventually, Governor Bennett called for a vote. The decision would be made by majority rule. Either they would help Lyra repair her ship and continue her journey, or they would send her away. As the votes were tallied, Rachel held her breath, unsure which way it would go. When the results were announced, relief washed over her. By a narrow margin, the colony had decided to help. Cheers erupted from those who supported Lyra, while others grumbled in protest. Jack stormed out of the hall, muttering under his breath, but Rachel barely noticed. Her focus was on Lyra, who sat quietly beside her, clutching the glowing object. Though she couldn't understand the specifics, she seemed to sense that something important had happened. Her eyes met Rachel's, filled with gratitude and hope. With the colony's approval secured, work began immediately on repairing Lyra's damaged vessel. Engineers and technicians collaborated to locate the crash site, using coordinates derived from the glowing object. When they found the remains of the ship, it was clear the damage was extensive. Panels were scorched, wires exposed, and critical systems offline. But the colony's best minds threw themselves into the task, determined to succeed. Rachel visited the site often, bringing Lyra with her whenever possible. Watching the engineers work, Laura's fascination was evident. She moved among them, observing their tools and techniques with rapt attention. Occasionally, she would point to something and make soft sounds, as if trying to explain how it worked. Though no one understood her completely, her gestures provided valuable insights, speeding up the repair process. As the days passed, the atmosphere in the colony shifted. What had once been fear and division gave way to unity and purpose. People, who had doubted Lyra's intentions, now pitched in to help, inspired by the idea of aiding another species. Even Jack softened slightly, though he still kept his distance. For the first time in years, the settlers of New Haven felt connected, not just to each other, but to something greater. Through it all, Rachel remained by Lyra's side, guiding her and ensuring she felt safe. She knew their time together was limited, that soon Lyra would leave to fulfill her mission. But instead of sadness, Rachel felt pride. Together, they had bridged the gap between two worlds, proving that kindness and cooperation could overcome even the deepest fears. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm orange glow over the settlement, Rachel sat with Lyra outside the medical bay. The glowing object rested between them, its light steady and calm. Neither spoke. They didn't need to. In that moment, surrounded by the hum of activity and the promise of a brighter future, they simply existed, two souls bound by an unbreakable connection. The day finally came when Lyra's ship was ready for launch. The colony had worked tirelessly, pooling their skills and resources to repair the damaged vessel. It wasn't perfect. Some systems still flickered unpredictably, but it was functional, enough to carry Lyra on her journey. Everyone gathered near the edge of the settlement, where the ship stood gleaming under the pale light of the distant sun. Its sleek design was unlike anything humans had ever seen, a testament to the advanced technology of Lyra's people. Rachel stood at the center of the crowd, holding Lyra's hand tightly. She felt a mix of emotions swirling inside her: pride, sadness, and hope. Over the past weeks, she had grown deeply attached to Lyra, treating her like a younger sister or even a daughter. Now, as they prepared to say goodbye, Rachel struggled to hold back tears. She knelt down so she could look Lyra in the eyes. "You're going to do amazing things," she said softly. "Your people sent you because they believed in you, and I believe in you too." Lyra tilted her head, studying Rachel's face. Then, with surprising tenderness, she reached out and touched Rachel's cheek. Her large, oval-shaped eyes shimmered with emotion, though no tears fell. For a moment, they simply stared at each other, sharing a silent understanding that transcended words. Governor Bennett stepped forward, breaking the quiet. "We've done all we can to prepare the ship," she announced, addressing the crowd. "It's time to send her on her way." A murmur of agreement rippled through the settlers, though many looked uneasy. This was uncharted territory, not just for Lyra, but for humanity as well. No one knew what would happen once she left. Before boarding, Lyra paused and turned to face the crowd. She held the glowing object high above her head, its light pulsing brightly. For a moment, everyone held their breath, unsure what to expect. Then the artifact emitted a soft hum, growing louder until it filled the air around them. Images began to appear in the sky above the ship, scenes of Earth, lush forests, bustling cities, and smiling faces. It was as if the object was thanking them, showing gratitude for their kindness and effort. The crowd gasped in awe, some even clapping. Jack Miller, who had been skeptical from the start, stood quietly at the back, his arms crossed. But even he couldn't hide the hint of wonder on his face. As the images faded, Lyra lowered the object and took one last look at the colonists. Then, without hesitation, she climbed aboard the ship. The door closed behind her with a soft hiss, sealing her inside. Rachel stepped back, her heart pounding. She watched as the engines powered up, emitting a low hum that grew steadily louder. The ship lifted off the ground slowly at first, then shot into the sky with incredible speed, leaving a trail of light in its wake. Within seconds, it disappeared from view, vanishing into the vastness of space. For a long moment, no one spoke. The settlers stood in silence, staring at the empty horizon where the ship had been. Finally, Governor Bennett cleared her throat. "Well," she said, her voice steady but tinged with emotion, "we did it. We helped her." Her words seemed to break the spell, and the crowd began to disperse, murmuring among themselves. Rachel stayed behind, gazing up at the stars. Though Lyra was gone, her presence lingered in the air, a reminder of the bond they had formed. Emily joined her after a while, carrying a clipboard filled with notes about the glowing object. "Do you think we'll ever see her again?" Emily asked quietly. Rachel shook her head. "I don't know. Maybe not. But that doesn't matter. What matters is that we gave her a chance to finish her mission. That's something we can be proud of." Emily nodded, smiling faintly. "You're right, and who knows? Maybe someday someone else will find her and learn from her story." As the days passed, life on New Haven gradually returned to normal. Miners went back to digging. Scientists resumed their experiments, and families carried on with their routines. But something had changed. The colony felt different now, more united than before. People greeted each other warmly, offered help, without being asked, and talked openly about the lessons they had learned from Lyra's visit. Rachel continued her work at the medical bay, though she often found herself thinking about Lyra. She kept the glowing object safe, storing it in a secure case in her office. Occasionally she would take it out and study it, hoping to unlock more of its secrets. Emily visited regularly, bringing new theories and ideas to test. Together they made slow but steady progress, uncovering fragments of information about Lyra's species and their technology. One evening, as Rachel sat alone in her office, she decided to write down everything that had happened. She wanted to document Lyra's story, not just for herself, but for future generations. As she wrote, she realized how much Lyra had taught her. Before meeting Lyra, Rachel had thought of herself as just a medic, someone who patched up wounds and moved on. But now she understood that healing wasn't just about fixing physical injuries. It was about compassion, empathy, and making connections. Her thoughts were interrupted by a knock on the door. It was Alan Hayes, carrying a tray of food. "Thought you might need a break," he said, setting the tray down on her desk. He glanced at the glowing object which rested nearby. "Still working on it?" Rachel smiled. "Always. There's so much we don't know yet, but every little discovery feels like a step forward." Alan nodded, leaning against the wall. "You've done something incredible here, Rachel. Not many people would have taken the risk you did." "It wasn't just me," Rachel replied. "Everyone played a part. Even those who doubted us in the beginning came around in the end. That's what makes this place special." They talked for a while longer, sharing stories and reflecting on the events of the past weeks. When Alan left, Rachel returned to her writing. She finished late into the night, pouring her heart into every word. By the time she was done, she felt a sense of closure, not because Lyra was gone, but because their connection would always remain. Months passed, and the memory of Lyra became a cherished part of the colony's history. Children whispered stories about the silver-skinned girl who had come from the stars, and adults spoke of her with admiration. The glowing object remained a source of fascination, inspiring new projects and collaborations. Though no definitive answers emerged, the settlers of New Haven embraced the mystery, knowing it represented something greater than themselves. Rachel often found herself gazing at the stars, wondering where Lyra's journey had taken her. Was she safe? Had she found others willing to listen to her message? These questions stayed with her, a gentle reminder of the infinite possibilities beyond their small corner of the universe. One night, as she stood outside the medical bay, Rachel noticed something unusual, a faint blue light streaking across the sky. At first, she thought it was a meteor, but then she realized it was moving too deliberately, almost like it was searching for something. Her heart skipped a beat as she watched it disappear over the horizon. Could it be Lyra? Or perhaps another visitor following in her footsteps? Whatever the truth was, Rachel smiled. She felt a renewed sense of purpose, knowing that the work they had started was far from over. Somewhere out there, amidst the endless expanse of space, a bond forged between two worlds endured, a testament to the power of kindness in an indifferent universe. And though Lyra was gone, her legacy lived on, reminding everyone that even the smallest act of compassion could change the course of history. Weeks turned into months, and life on New Haven settled into a rhythm once again. The colony buzzed with activity, but the memory of Lyra lingered like a soft breeze that never quite faded. People talked about her less often now, but when they did, it was with a sense of pride. Rachel Dawson, who had been at the center of everything, found herself reflecting on those days more than anyone else. She missed Lyra deeply, not just as a person but as a symbol of hope, a reminder that even in the vastness of space, connections could be made. Rachel still kept the glowing object in her office, locked away in a secure case. It wasn't just a relic. It was a piece of Lyra, a tangible link to the girl who had changed their lives. Occasionally, she would take it out and study it, running tests alongside Emily Carter. Though they had made progress decoding its signals, much of it remained a mystery. The artifact seemed to pulse faintly at times, almost as if it were alive, responding to Rachel's presence. She couldn't explain it, but she felt certain that Lyra's essence, her spirit, was somehow tied to the object. One evening, as Rachel sat alone in her office, she decided to try something new. Instead of focusing solely on decoding the signals, she focused on listening. She placed the glowing object on her desk and spoke softly to it, imagining Lyra standing there beside her. "Where are you now?" she asked. "Are you safe? Did you find someone to help you?" Her voice was quiet, almost a whisper, but she hoped, somehow, that Lyra might hear her. To her surprise, the object responded. Its glow brightened slightly, and a low hum filled the room. Rachel froze, her heart racing. She reached for her scanner, recording the sound, but then she stopped. This wasn't about science or data. It was something deeper. For a brief moment, she felt a connection, not through words or images, but through emotion. It was as if Lyra were reaching back, letting her know she was okay. When the hum faded, Rachel sat quietly, tears streaming down her face. She didn't need proof or evidence to believe what she had felt. Lyra was out there, carrying the message her people had entrusted to her. And though they were separated by unimaginable distances, their bond remained unbroken. The next morning, Rachel shared her experience with Emily during breakfast. They met in the small cafeteria near the medical bay, where the smell of freshly brewed coffee mingled with the chatter of workers starting their day. Rachel hesitated before speaking, unsure how Emily would react. After all, it sounded almost magical, hardly the kind of thing a scientist would accept without skepticism. But to her relief, Emily listened intently, nodding thoughtfully. "You know," she said after a pause, "we've always assumed the object is purely technological. But what if it's more than that? What if it's alive in some way?" Rachel frowned. "Alive? Like an AI or something?" "Not necessarily," Emily replied. "Think about it. We've seen how it responds to emotions, yours and Lyra's. Maybe it's designed to bridge not just languages but feelings too. It's possible your connection with Lyra isn't gone, it's just different now." Rachel considered this, her mind racing. If Emily was right, then the object wasn't just a tool for communication. It was a living link between two worlds. The idea filled her with both wonder and responsibility. She realized she couldn't let the artifact gather dust in her office. It deserved to be studied, understood, and perhaps even shared with others. That afternoon, Rachel approached Governor Laura Bennett with a proposal. She suggested creating a research team dedicated to studying the glowing object and its potential applications. "This isn't just about Lyra anymore," Rachel explained. "It's about what we can learn from her people and what we can teach ourselves. Their technology could change the way we live, maybe even prevent us from making the same mistakes they did." Governor Bennett listened carefully, her expression thoughtful. "You're asking for resources," she said finally. "And not just any resources, time, manpower, and funding. Do you really think it's worth it?" "Yes," Rachel replied firmly. "We owe it to Lyra and to ourselves. Helping her wasn't just an act of kindness. It was an investment in our future. If we ignore this opportunity, we're missing the point." After a long silence, Governor Bennett nodded. "All right," she said. "I'll approve the project, but only if you lead it. You're the one who brought Lyra into our lives. If anyone can make sense of this, it's you." Rachel accepted the challenge, knowing it wouldn't be easy. But she also knew it was the right thing to do. Over the following weeks, she assembled a team of volunteers, including Emily, Alan Hayes, and several other scientists and engineers. Together, they set up a lab near the medical bay, transforming it into a hub of innovation and discovery. As the research progressed, the colony began to feel a renewed sense of purpose. People who had once doubted Lyra's intentions now threw themselves into the project, inspired by the idea of learning from another civilization. Even Jack Miller, who had been one of the loudest critics, joined reluctantly, drawn by curiosity more than anything else. He spent hours examining the ship's schematics, marveling at the precision and elegance of its design. "If nothing else," he admitted grudgingly, "their tech is impressive." The glowing object became the centerpiece of the lab, surrounded by monitors, scanners, and experimental equipment. Every day brought new insights, though many questions remained unanswered. The team discovered that the object could generate energy fields capable of shielding against radiation, a breakthrough that could revolutionize space travel. They also uncovered hints of biological components within the artifact, suggesting it might adapt to its user over time. But the most profound discovery came unexpectedly. One night, while analyzing the object's energy patterns, Emily noticed something strange: faint traces of DNA embedded in its core. At first she thought it was contamination, but further testing revealed otherwise. The DNA matched no known species. It belonged to Lyra's people. Rachel stared at the results, her mind reeling. "It's like part of them is inside it," she murmured. Like they wanted to leave behind more than just knowledge. They wanted to leave behind themselves. Emily nodded, her eyes wide with awe. "Maybe that's why it feels alive. It's not just a machine, it's a piece of their legacy." The realization hit Rachel like a wave. Lyra hadn't come alone. She had carried fragments of her entire species with her, encoded within the glowing object. It was a gift, a way for her people to ensure they would never truly be forgotten. Rachel felt a surge of gratitude, not just for Lyra, but for the trust her people had placed in humanity. As the months passed, the colony thrived in ways no one had anticipated. The innovations inspired by the glowing object improved daily life, from safer mining operations to more efficient energy systems. But beyond the practical benefits, there was a deeper shift. People began to see themselves differently, not as isolated settlers struggling to survive, but as part of something greater. They started thinking about their impact on the planet they called home, vowing to avoid the mistakes that had doomed Lyra's world. Rachel continued to lead the research team, driven by a sense of duty and wonder. She often dreamed of Lyra, imagining her traveling through the stars, spreading her message of hope and warning. Though she didn't know where Lyra was or whether she had succeeded, she believed wholeheartedly in her mission. And she knew that, in some small way, the colony had played a role in shaping the future of two civilizations. One evening, as Rachel stood outside the lab gazing at the stars, she felt a familiar warmth in her pocket, the faint glow of the object she carried everywhere she went. She smiled, knowing that Lyra's story wasn't over. Somewhere out there, amidst the endless expanse of space, a bond forged between two worlds endured, a testament to the power of kindness, courage, and connection.